Fuck me, bro. We've hit the end of the fucking journey. I say that even though I know there's an epilogue light novel series coming out that may or may not be animated in the future. Kind of just depends. Considering they're just now starting the epilogue series. If we get it, we won't probably get it. We won't probably get like the first part of it until like I want to say until like next maybe another year or two. It's gonna take a minute, but we're finished with the main story at least. With my teen romantic comedy is not what I expected, or my teen romantic comedy snafu, or Oregairu. For some reason, I can't stop coughing. It's bullshit. It's almost like I'm choked up. I don't fucking know. This is not how I start a video, to be honest with you. What if I tried to restart it to give it a better ending? Wouldn't seem genuine. So I'm gonna just get off the top my opinions. I'm a low-key feel like this episode was rushed. It feels like they threw a bunch of shit into one episode because they couldn't get enough. Like, realistically, this could have easily been at least somewhere between 2 to 3 more episodes. But they threw everything in one fucking episode, and as a consequence, the latter half of it especially feels rushed. It's like we got the fucking confession, and as soon as we hit the fucking confession, we went right into like, let's go out on a date, let's do the prom, like, let's have our final goodbyes with Sensei, and then some closure with the girls, and then the final sequence of the anime. Like, for example, I think the scene that makes me think that the most is the sequence in which everybody comes to help with the prom, right? And then they do the dramatic sequence of Yui being the last one to show up. And then they do something similar, not even like 10 minutes later, at the end of the episode, with Yui coming in and being like, I have a request. Like, it makes me feel like that those weren't supposed to be sequences that came back to back. It feels like that sequence only happened that way because they needed to hit all the beats. Like, so they still wanted Hikigai and Yui to go on a date. They still wanted the confession. They still wanted the girl talk. And they still wanted, like, Yui to get some dramatic sequences. And I'm like, I get it, but I can tell it's rushed. Now, all things considered, even though it's rushed, I wasn't inherently mad with the result we got. But you can tell it's rushed. Like if nothing else, you can tell the last episode is like combining at least 2 to 3 episodes worth of content into one episode. And somehow I still came out of it not really mad about anything. It actually legitimately pisses me off. Like, you know how a rush episode comes out and you're like, you ruined the effect of certain sequences? Here, I felt everything. And it was like, but I could tell it's rushed. I couldn't fathom how I feel about it. They also gave Yuki Nosa a fuck ton of cute moments in 23 minutes, even though she's not in every fucking sequence. And I'm sitting there like, when did you get this fucking adorable? God damn it. Especially like a lot of the cute misunderstandings, like Hikigai thinking she's talking about weddings and shit, and Yuki Nosa looking shook. The fact that she's like the more forward between them, that's also kind of trips me out. Because up until season 3, I kept saying that Hikigai emotionally had matured quicker than Yuki Nosa. At some point in time, Yuki Nosa hates losing. I almost feel like that's a joke in itself. So she like overtook him in emotional growth to the point that she's the one out here being super forward. Like at the end of the episode, she's like, well, you want to come to my house for dinner? And he's like, what? And she's like, my mom would love to have you. She's really fond of you. And he's like, oh, no, I got this thing. And literally counteracted every one of his fucking possible lies he could tell. And it's like, fuck. It's like, this bitch is overtaking him. And then the goddamn I love you thing that threw me all the way off. I didn't think she was going to say it. These were 2 characters who couldn't even confess to each other properly. And this bitch had the gall to come out here and be like, I love you. Be like, nah. I don't know what the fuck happened, bro. She went from being like, cool, and it's not like I hated Yuki Nosa by any means, But like the jump it feels like from last episode to this one, where she went from being alright, she's alright, she cute, to like, alright, she gonna fuck around and get married. You better chill out. Like, that's the one thing I'll say. It's one of the few animes where I say I like both girls. Usually in most situations, hell, I even like Aroha. By the way, the Komachi Aroha dynamic is god tier. I fucking love that shit. The fact that Aroha calls her little rice girl and Komachi is like, you know what? The one person that probably makes more sense to be with my brother is the one who has a shitty personality just like he does. Pretty much kind of throwing in each of the niches that each of the girls fall into. Whereas Yukinosha hits him on more of a person, is a good counter to him personality-wise. Yui is very emotionally supportive, and Aroha is just as bad as he is. Just in different ways. But they all have their good points and bad points, and they're all willing to grow and change, which is what makes them all three likable. Aroha has a bad introduction, but like I said, I think that's partially due to the fact that there wasn't enough time to do like the light novel proper introduction, so they had to like finagle one. So she ends up just kind of being thrown in the middle of the fucking season, it feels like. It's like, oh, by the way, here's Aroha. Now, to the point where I'm at now, where I'm like, alright, yeah, I fucking like Aroha. I like all three of the girls. All for different reasons. Aroha's like the mean bitch who knows how, but like she's not actually mean. Like, she's more annoying in the second season than she is in the third season. But it's kind of that growth and change of their characters. Like the fact that, and then the Hiratsuka scene towards the end of it, when she essentially ends up quoting Hikigaya from the first season. Actually, from the first episode of the first season, she quotes and references that version of himself during this sequence. And it's funny how different he views himself now, where Hikigaya actually cringes and listening to what he used to talk about. It's probably been maybe, a year at this point? Yeah, the first season I think is the first year. I think the second season and third season take place during the second year. But the first year stuff I think is first season stuff. And it's funny how much he cringes at himself from like a fucking year ago. And how lame and all that shit is. But at the same time, I love that his teacher is so white. They also decided to give them all like little pseudo like romance moments. Like Hiratsuka falling on top of him and shit while they're dancing, and it's like, like that. I was like, oh, bro, you can't. Hiratsuka is wifey material. The only reason why, and I think even Hinky guys admitted this, the only reason why those two didn't get together is age difference. That is fucking it. That is fucking it. If it wasn't for that goddamn age difference, they'll both Yukinosha, Yui, Aroha be the fuck out of there, bro. It's literally that shit. Like, it fucks me up, bro. But I do really want to talk about the series as a whole and why. And I think I've already said this, but I'll repeat it for the hell of it. This is my favorite slice of life series. There is no series that hits me in the same way as this. And even though I didn't cry, it still got visible reactions out of me. Like when she fucking told Hikigaya she loved him, man, I jumped up and freaked the fuck out, bro. Or even the shit that Yui says at the end of the goddamn episode that low-key makes me think that the light novels is gonna be more on some harem shit. The reason why I said that is because she flat out just went, my request is the guy I like has a girl in his life that seems like his girlfriend, that's my closest friend, and I want to be friends with forever. Low-key being like, it's like her version of a confession, even though I feel like if the epilogue series happens the way I think it's going to, I think she's going to give Hikigaya like a legit, like, I love you confession too. Hell, I think Aroha's going to do it, alright? Because you can tell both of them are low-key into it, and the fact that Aroha's conversation with Yui is literally just because they kind of seem to be a thing doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give the fuck up. That's literally what Aroha was alluding to. Although, as Komachi and I imagine Komachi's going to kind of goad Aroha into the same direction. I think she's low-key in that direction, but I think Komachi's going to low-key goad Aroha into the same direction. I just really appreciate this show for giving me a main character who a lot of people can relate to. The main thing that this series has going against it is that it's very based in subtleties. It's a show that if you're just watching it, it will come off kind of boring because all you're really interacting with is a bunch of words and goddamn minor actions. And if you're someone who doesn't pick up on the subtleties of humans and people and characters, this shit will come off boring to you. But as someone like me who does pick up on that kind of shit, ironically enough, like Hikigaya does, it's super interesting. I love some of the character dynamics and relationships. Hayama, which is a character who I actively thought I was going to hate. And low-key, I think that's half of the point. But I would love to see the developments on his side of the friendship because I feel like that shit was neglected for the sake of Hikigaya's relationships, which I understand why. Doesn't mean I still don't want to fucking see it. I low-key still believe before they graduate, those two are going to fight. And it's going to be it's going to be one of the funniest or one of the greatest moments in the goddamn series. I have no doubt in my mind those two are going to come to blows at some point. They are very open about not liking each other. But the reasoning behind why not liking each other is really fucking funny because they're low-key similar. Because Hikigaya has fallen into the Hayama trap. Hayama just seems to be more adept at being in that trap because he's actively choosing to stay in it. I want to see more about Hayama and Yukinoshi's history. I still want to see more about Haruno and her issues. Because I can kind of already tell the direction they're going with Haruno. Actually, I think Haruno and Hiratsuka are both like possible end result versions of Hikigaya. Where Hiratsuka is someone who did finally get her shit together and just has chosen to continue to I would say because the way I look at it is that Hikigaya's directions I would say is Haruno or Hiratsuka. Haruno who is someone who actively bathes herself in lies and deceit and shit to the point where she comes off very weird and jaded. And although she does care and she does have true feelings and she does have true motives and goals and agendas, she'll never let that shit be known. But the problem is that Haruno, by the time she realized that she had lost too much, which is why she's the way she is. Hiratsuka went into a similar situation where it took her way too long to figure shit out. But instead of being like Haruno, who just hides in her deceit, Hiratsuka's pretty straightforward about it. Pretty much, she's like the open loser versus the sore loser. That's actually the way I describe Haruno and Hiratsuka. People don't realize I can go into full conversation about all the characters that I really want to. Because the shit's just so good. These characters are so good. Am I low-key still mad that Yui's handled the way she was? Yeah, because especially the way this season plays out, she feels like a jobber. It feels like her role for all 3 seasons was to build those two up emotionally to grow strong enough so that they can confess to each other. And I'm like, bro, why did you dog her out like that? But I also don't like the fact of them trying to give her a love interest now. I hate when animes do that shit when they fuck up a relationship. You're the third wheel who inevitably gets cut off when the first two actually become a couple, and then they low-key try to throw a romance in for the third person so that they're not feel lonely. Which is, I get it and I understand the sentiment, but it doesn't feel real. It feels like you're conveniently doing that. Because in real life, that shit doesn't happen. In real life, some people are just fucking alone. And that's the issue of the situation. There's a lot. I feel like I can make separate videos on a bunch of different things. So I'm low-key, I'm conflicted about how much I really want to go into and divulge into right now. Because this show is a lot for me in a lot of different ways. And I can't really, and I feel like I'm almost there's something in my throat and I can't say everything I want to say. This show did a lot for me. It's like I said, it's my favorite slice of life. Hikigaya is such a relatable character. I love the development between him, Yukinoshita, and Yui. I like the whole interesting dynamics with all the side characters. Not all of them get the development they probably should, but goddamn it, a lot of them do. And I appreciate those dynamics. It's even funny that the Totsuka joke got dropped completely in this season, by the way. If anyone didn't notice, the Totsuka, I'm low-key gay for Totsuka thing, that dropped after the second season. That's a subtle change that most people wouldn't even have caught on to. But I appreciate it. And it's funny because the anime went out of its way to make the show more real than to make it less haremy, which is what the light novel is. The light novel is way more haremy. That's why there were parts of it that were cut out for Saki, and Rojas introduced weirdly, and they tried to overly focus on Yui, Yukinoshita, and Hikigai's relationship. Even though there was some subtle shit going on with Hiratsuka, some subtle shit going on with Kawasaki, some subtle shit going on with Haruno. Hikigai was one of those characters in the light novel probably getting a bunch of fucking bitches. The anime tried to tone it down to make it feel more real, and I think in the grand scheme of things, it worked out to where I actually probably would argue, minus some bullshit, I probably would say, I bet you the anime is probably a better overall experience than the light novel in that regard, in terms of having like a genuine romance story. I bet you it's better in the anime than the light novel. I appreciate how much this show did for me in terms of a channel. Like, bro, one of my most famous videos on the vlog channel is literally the last episode review of season 2. Because you guys love that analysis so much, and you got so involved into the series and saw where I was coming from. And in some sense, I feel like maybe I wasn't completely right on everything, but the fact that I could have that conversation between a basic ass conversation between 3 characters that had no like ridiculous backdrop to it like a shonen series would, to me speaks volumes of the quality of writing. Like, this dude, like, the writing for this show is great. I love the subtle movements. I love the subtleties. I give 100% props to Feel. I think it's Good Feel or Feel. I forget the name of the company who animates the 2nd and 3rd season. Because when we heard the studios were switching, I was like, I don't know, bro. But at the same time, they fucking nailed it, bro. They nailed it. And I low-key am debating whether or not I still like... and every season has shit in it I'll rewatch. Like, I can't even... For a while, I think when I got towards the end of this season, I was like, I low-key think 3rd season I might rewatch more than 2nd season. And then I forget about the latter half of the 2nd season, which is the part of it I really like. Pretty much the genuine stuff going into all the Disneyland stuff. Like, I think it's Destinyland in the show. I forget what it's called. But, God, I love all the moments with Yui. I love a lot of the Roha moments. I even like the different versions of themselves. Like the fact that first season Hikigaya, Yui, and Yukinoshita are relatively different, especially Hikigaya and Yukinoshita are pretty different to their 3rd season selves. Hell, even Yukinoshita between seasons has her own charm between each of the seasons, where she's more like cold and you're still trying to figure out her persona in the 1st season. The 2nd season, she's becoming more vulnerable and more open to like a healthy relationship with Yui and Hikigaya. And the 3rd season, where she'll fluctuate from being like starting to kind of go into her own self, grow into her own person. And then you get to the end of the season where she's out here saying, I love you and shit, and saying, you should come over for dinner. And you're like, what the fuck? Man, even Hikigaya, who goes from pretty much being a pessimistic good guy. Pretty much, like, Hikigaya is that kind of guy who's naturally a nice guy, but has to mask it in some ways and being like a pessimistic asshole. And doesn't really know how to convey himself truthfully because he always got burned when he conveyed himself truthfully. And he was afraid of that rejection. Or afraid of that being left in the dark feeling. Which is why he says, like, his issue is that he wants to know things because when he doesn't know is when he's fucking terrified of it. Because then he doesn't know what the fuck he's walking into. He went from being like that kind of guy to a guy who actively like cringes at his old self. He'd be the dude who would do a reaction video to his old YouTube videos or him back in the day and cringe at everything he did. Because he knows why he was acting the way he was and why it was such a terrible thought process. God, it took him until like halfway through 2nd season to realize how wrong he was. And then that's when he could truly start making legitimate changes to make himself a better person. And even now, he still struggles with it. But fuck it. The point is that he acknowledges his weaknesses like he did in the 1st season. Not saying every part of him in the 1st season was wrong. For example, he still acknowledges his weaknesses. The difference is that instead of just taking pride in them and just loathing in that little bubble of being a shitty person, he now openly says, I recognize my own weaknesses. I'm gonna try to take steps to make sure I don't fuck up. Because in some ways, I feel like he feels guilty about kind of the burden he put on Yui and Yuki Noshita having to put up with his shit. But that's like all the shit you gather just from the show, just from the experience of it. It's literally one of those experiences I can't really convey to you why it's so good. You kind of, to me, you have to watch like the first few episodes and see if you can get it. And if you can't get it, you may not be able to get it. But for the ones who can get it, the ones who resonate with it and it clicks and it touches their hearts and their souls, you've walked into a great fucking ride, and man, you won't be disappointed when it ends. You'll feel sad. You'll laugh your fucking ass off. You'll get depressed, and you'll fucking struggle and writhe in certain parts. But at the end of it all, you will come out of that tunnel, and you will appreciate the experience you went through, because, hey, no one ever said living was a fucking pretty picture 100% of the time. Hell, if you're not writhing and struggling and losing your shit at moments, it ain't genuine. I don't even know if that was a good setup for that punchline. I don't fucking know. But I threw it out there, so we'll see what you guys say in the comment section. You know, I would say some dumb shit, like profoundly dumb shit, like, I didn't edit these videos because it doesn't fit with the theme of the show. When the reality is I'm just being fucking lazy. But, if anything else, I love the show. I love this show wholeheartedly. It's my favorite slice of life. It's just so good. Hikigai is probably one of my favorite characters in anime, period. And if you guys want more other videos about Snafu and the characters and discussions on it, let me know in the comments section and we'll fucking talk about it. But for now, I'm gonna leave it at this and just say it was a great ride. I look forward to seeing or hearing or reading the epilogue series, and low-key, Yui's still best girl. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. But Yuki Noshita's cute as fuck, and I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. Also, anyone who fucking sits there and tells me Toradora is better, eat a dick. That's all I'm going to say about that. I saw that in the comment section to the last episode about how they think low-key Toradora is sadder. I don't give a fucking Toradora is sadder, because this is a better show. Alright, peace.